I'd like to continue with something we brought up in the last podcast we had, and you were talking a little bit about it, but you didn't really get into it, and I think it'd be a good topic, and that's the souls, where you were talking about the different levels, and you told a story about Adam and how when he fell, he didn't lose his two higher levels of what you call consciousness, but soul levels, which was his Yehida and his Yahaya. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was just wondering if we could maybe dwell into that a little bit more.
Well, it doesn't hurt to do a review on some of this stuff or try to touch base on some of these terminologies and things like that. I think it's important for understanding the Torah, understanding rabbis, having a little better understanding, to know some of these terminologies and to understand them a little bit better. So it's not going to hurt for us to go over and talk about it and discuss it. I think articulation is a very important concept in learning these things, being able to understand it well enough to ask questions, to be able to discuss it. And so we can have a little bit of an introduction, so to speak. And then, as we mentioned last week, there's the book of Inner Space by Rabbi Ari Kaplan that is a very good source book for learning a lot more of this. And of course, there's many, many other different books. One of the things is we have to be careful about is just going and learning it off of the internet. There's especially if you don't know particular teachers or know what avenues to look under, you get off into the internet and you can fall into all kinds of things. So it's good to be able to have somebody to ask for references on certain materials, or follow recommended sources. So
you talking rabbis or certain books, or both?
Well, both, yeah. Certain rabbis who just because they have rabbi in front of their name, they may not be somebody that is trained properly or, following the right Torah paths in order to be able to teach this kind of thing. Okay. So you want to be sure kind of who you're learning from and what you're learning from. Anything by Ari Kaplan, Rabbi Ari Kaplan, is obviously good. There's, like I said, there's many others out there. So, but just to give an idea of an overall look at things, and hopefully, I know you're kind of familiar with some of this stuff, Brad, but hopefully I can present it to you in a way that'll make you think a little bit more about it than maybe you did in previous discussions that we've had. So, and you're right, we talked about the Yehida and the Chaya, these two lofty levels of the soul. The Yehida is the divine essence. It's probably, it is connected to God. And there's nothing we can really understand and know about God. And there's nothing we can really understand and know about this level of the soul, about the Yehida. The same is kind of thought about the Chaya, the living essence. But the Chaya is what we would probably think about as the living force that's around us. It's not... some people would maybe even say it's like your aura, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's that living force around us, the living essence that is still very connected to God. And there's not a lot we can know about it or understand about it. But like we were saying, These two levels of consciousness, or these two levels of the soul, did not fall with Adam. And that's why they remain at this lofty level. Okay. So,
I just wanted to ask, since we're right, you were talking about that. Is that, not to get off track, but is that where Enoch ascended to, that level of consciousness?
That's
when Enoch walked with God and he was no more? Okay.
Right. And his consciousness ascended to this level. And I don't know where, I never could find this source again, and I'm not sure where it was. It may have been I thought it was in 3 Enoch, but it might have been in Enoch 1. It might have been another source. It could have been the Book of Jubilees or something. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I remember it said that Enoch was blessed something like 5,663 times, and he became as big as the universe.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know where I heard it either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably in one of those sources. But it's an interesting idea that Enoch basically went from a 3D being to literally a 4D being, without boundaries, being as big as a universe, so to speak, being basically without boundaries. I just found that interesting that man could achieve a level of consciousness that high, or at least Enoch could. And Elijah did the same as well and became, Sandalphon. So, that's getting into a whole lot of angel hierarchies and a lot of that. It's just a whole nother topic.
Right.
But it does exist. And this is where it is an interesting connection to the soul levels. By looking at these two levels, the Chaya, the living essence, and the Yechida, the divine essence, that didn't fall with Adam, and that they remained lofty and connected to God. And then obviously Enoch and Elijah, and it didn't say Elijah made it to these levels of consciousness, but he was similar to Enoch, being that he didn't die.
Right.
So now we get into levels of the neshama, which is the breath. It's now, I guess we can go ahead and back up just a minute and talk about a couple other things while we're learning about the soul. And that is learning about the worlds as well, because they kind of correspond. So so if we're going to give a little brief interview over the levels of the soul, we can give a brief overview of the worlds as well. So the level of Yechida, the soul level on Yechida, is on the same level as the world of Adam Kadmon. Okay.
Right.
And Adam Kadmon is basically, it's the primordial, it means primordial man. It's the world of infinite possibilities. It's where everything that ever existed or ever could have existed, has a potential of existing. And
so can I just wanted to ask, is that, would that be considered Ein Sof, or is that different? So that terminology?
Well, it's not the Ein Sof, but it's at that very high level. Okay. The world of Adam Kadmon is at that high of a level. And it's really, it could be said that it's the point where the Ein Sof created the will to create.
Mm. Very nice.
And why did he call it Adam Kadmon, or why is it called Adam Kadmon? Because God had man on his mind when he decided to create the will to create. This is, like I said, we're at a very high and a very lofty level. When we're talking about, obviously, this level of Yehida and Adam Kadmon. And then, of course, we talked about Chaya, the living essence. And that is associated with the world of Atzilut, of, this world of oneness. So, nearness, it could be called that, with everything was near and associated, or everything was within everything else. It was one, and it was a unique oneness.
So if you were to take this and put it on the spherotic structure, Adam Kadmon and Yehida would be Keter. Is that correct?
Adam Kadmon is kind of, it'd be associated, what we're doing here, if we're looking into studying this a little bit, we're actually looking at the name of God, the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He.
So Yehida would be what, the tip of the Yud?
Yes, it would be it'd be the tip of the Yud.
Okay.
That would be above, that would be a kind of above Keter. The Yud would be Keter.
Okay.
And so that would be these two levels. It's a very, like I said, it's a very high level. There's not a lot we can know about it. We can do that, but we can associate this level of the soul with these vessels.
Okay.
And this is, so that takes us on to the letter He, which would be associated with, now, wait a minute. Let me back up, because I could tell you, I'll just make sure we're getting this clear, is that Keter is the tip of the Yud. Okay. I don't know if I answered that question or not.
Okay. And you did now. So the Keter is the tip of the Yud, which is Yehida. Is that correct? Do I have that? Okay.
Right. Chokmah is, if we're associating now the spherotic structure with the name, with the levels of the soul, and with the worlds. So we're probably getting into a little bit more than a easy overview.
Well, that's how these discussions go, we're here.
So, yeah. And why not? We're here and we're talking about it. So yes, Yehida is the tip of the Yud, which is the Keter. Atzilut is the Yud, and it is associated with the spherot of Chokmah, wisdom.
Okay, right.
Now we kind of got those two higher levels of the souls. You kind of gave them an idea of the world they're associated with, and what part of the Tetragrammaton they're associated with. And we can go on to the Neshama. And the Neshama is the breath, okay? And it is associated with the letter He, the second letter of He, and its sphero would be Bina, okay?
Okay.
It would be the Bina, and of course the world it would be is Berea, and that would be creation. And so you have all of this Keter, Hokmah, Bina, the spherotic structures, being the world of Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, and Berea, and the souls of Yehida, Chaya, and Neshama is all making up the Mohin, or the head.
The head.
In the spherotic structure, along with Da'at, which is knowing.
So we're on the neshama now. So is that when we hear the word neshama, do we associate that to when God created Adam, he put the breath of life in Adam? Would that be the neshama? Am I saying that correctly?
Absolutely. Associated, that's the neshama, and that was associated with Adam at that when he was formed, and the breath was so that is the source text in the Torah for that. And so now, and of course we was talking about Da'at, and Da'at is knowing. And so it's not associated with any of these tetragrammaton or whatever. Da'at is a product of wisdom and understanding coming together and creating knowledge. So if we're thinking about it in the physical body, as we're talking about it was the mohin, it would be, right brain, left brain, middle brain. Okay. And that would be kind of the physical coordinates within the body. So we have the yud and the hey being of the tetragrammaton, which is the 4-letter name of God. And this is kind of making up the head. And like I said, a lot of this stuff, it to kind of grasp, you may be listening to a teaching, you may be listening to particular rabbis that are talking about it, and having a little bit of understanding about this may allow you to grasp what the rabbi is saying a little better and understand where he's coming from. If it's something that, you don't get the point of it, you don't get it, then don't worry about it.
And this is all talked about in the book by R.E. Kaplan, Inner Space, right? If anybody wanted to pick, get a good source book, good source material, Inner Space would have all this information that you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It'll go over the worlds and the souls and all of this. And basically, this is probably one of the main sources that I use to wrap my head around all of this.
Yeah, it's probably been 10 years plus for me since I've, opened that book. Matter of fact, I think I've given the book to someone. I don't even own a copy anymore. I need to get another one.
Well, it's worth having, and I've heard people say, I've read it 3 times and, I still don't get it. And I've heard people say they've read it 1 time and say that, talk about how well they got it. And after listening to them talk about it, you realize they didn't really get it. So it's kind of one of those deals. And I think we talked about this in the other podcast, that it's good to have this kind of information taught to you and articulated, and listen to it and be able to interact with it and work with it. You will understand it and grasp it a lot better. And so there's even if you're listening to somebody that can be recommended on YouTube or something that's a good teacher that's discussing it, and listen to them and just make yourself available to the information. And like I said, if it's something that you don't feel that is interesting to you, or you're not drawn into it, then leave it alone. But one of the things you don't have to do is you don't have to condemn everybody to hell if you don't like it. Okay. If you don't get it. I mean,
Yeah.
really,
Absolutely.
and you ain't got to sit there and scream and holler and condemn everybody to death for learning it. Okay.
Right.
If it's not if it's not where you're at,
if it's not where you're at, absolutely. Yeah. For me, it seems to, I can only speak for myself because I don't know other people, but that kind of esoteric teachings I've always been drawn to. You know what I mean? It's always been very interesting to me. But the halakha is beautiful in itself, and it seems like the older I get, the more I like, reading the Mishnah or the Midrash or, flipping through the Talmud when we're studying different subjects. But in the very beginning, I would say the stuff that drew me into learning, being interested in Torah was books like R.E. Kaplan's Inner Space, along with many other books, Shadow of the Ladders, Rabbi Ashlag, which is like an introduction into, Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
And those type of books really kind of opened my mind and expanded my thinking. Like I think you were talking about last week where you have and I don't know the terminology. You said a Yiddish cup compared to what was the other one?
Goyish cup, yeah.
Goyish cup. Like that kind of information and those kind of teachings kind of flipped that for me. It seemed like.
Yeah. And there's, I think it's the Rambam that says if you've been studying halakha and it's not doing anything for you, stop and learn the Kabbalah. And of course, there's going, so there's people that like the esoteric teachings and wouldn't pick up a book of Rambam to save their life, or wouldn't learn any halakha to save their life, wouldn't do that, but would learn, all of this different stuff. I'm kind of like you. I kind of like all of it. I learn from all of it. I'm interested in all of it, and what what I don't grasp, I don't dwell on, and I don't I just kind of let it go and
right.
Come back to it later on. Maybe I'll get it. Maybe I won't. It's not one of those things. If you try to grab a hold of a lot of this stuff and start making these absolutes out of it, you're going to wind up getting yourself in trouble. You're going to make an absolute out of the Rambam, and it's only the Rambam, and all I'm going to learn is a Rambam, and all you're going to talk about is a Rambam, and all we're going to do is a Rambam, and all it is Rambam. Well, guess what? You just got a Rambam denomination.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with Kabbalah. If you're doing this stuff and it's Kabbalah this and it's everything is that, and you go from where you can't even discuss any topic unless you're on the highest sod level that you possibly know. And it's absolutely that. And it's nothing else but that. And it can't be anything but that. Well, then that's what you got. You got your denomination.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. I think if you get hung up on one or the other, but I think early on for somebody who's just, starting to look at the Torah, coming out of, whether it be Christianity or whatever, those subjects for me were the things that drew me into Torah and opened up the Mishnah and the Midrash and the Talmud and drew me into those. And then it's funny, I'll be reading the Mishnah and it'll draw me back to some Kabbalah sources that, that I didn't get before. It opened the door to start, understanding some more of the Kabbalistic terminologies and concepts.
Well, and it all has to be held on to lightly. Even the midrashic works and the esoteric works and all of this different stuff, and it's and be responsible with it and understand, kind of where everything's at and have some wisdom about it. And if you can do that, then you can look into these subjects and these topics. Because let me tell you, why are they in English if they're not intended to be read and studied? It's not it's not our fault that we're sitting here, me and you, two
Talking
boy
about these things
in Texas, talking about this. Why? Because you wrote it in English. Now you're responsible for it.
And now we have questions.
Now we have questions. Yeah. So it's, you see what I mean? It's like you can't have it both ways. I mean, you can't print it in English and then say, hey, don't look at that. Don't talk about that. Don't ask me about that.
It's a little too late for that. Once the information's out there, you translate it, and people are going to pick up these books, and I think the rabbis are. It is a different day. You said this in the last podcast. You said even the rabbis are saying it's a different day. You have these non-Jews studying this material, and they're coming to us, and they have questions and they want answers. We can choose. We can choose not to guide them and let it turn into what you're talking about. Basically, I wouldn't say a new religion, but something that's outside of the Torah. Or you can guide us through these different pathways and these different esoteric teachings to stay kosher and to learn this material the way it's supposed to be taught. I mean, it's supposed to be learned. So, I think it's really just falls onto the rabbis to accept that this is a different day and this stuff has been translated and we're not going back. We're only going forward. And I think, it's different from 20 years ago when we started. I can tell you that. And you couldn't get a rabbi to touch the subjects like we're talking about. You brought up the souls, the Yehida, the Haya, and then we got down to the Neshama. I think the first time I've heard the terminology Neshama, I can't even remember. And I asked a question about it to a rabbi, and he kind of looked at me strange, like, what do you want to know about that? It's your soul. And that's basically the answer I got. But that was 15 years ago. Now with these rabbis, you ask that question and you just open the floodgates,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, like I said, I've heard the teaching said that because we are in the final footsteps of Mashiach and the Mashiach is so close that all this stuff is coming out and being opened up to the nations, and the nations are engaging in it, and it's a new day, it's a new time. The nations are beginning to ask questions and expecting answers from the rabbis who are supposed to be the light to the nations. And there's no mistake that these books are written in English, and this information is coming out. It's not a mistake. It is preparing a consciousness to receive the Mashiach, even in the nations.
Absolutely. Well, let's get back to where you were at on the souls, and we were you talked about the Yehida, which is on the level of Adam Kadmon, which is what you would say is the tip of the Yud. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And then you went to Yahaya, which is Atzilut, which is the Yud, correct?
Right.
And then the Neshama, which is the world of Bria, and the Hay.
Correct. And see, and so you're associating all these things with the Tetragrammaton, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, name of God, that is all we can truly know about God is His name, because we're incapable of understanding anything about God Himself. So we understand His name through His attributes, and that's what the spherotic structures are. These are attributes of wisdom, of wisdom and understanding and knowledge, and all the different ones. So when you study, you learn the spherotic structure. You're learning about the attributes of God and how His name is associated with those, and how we learn that through the levels of the soul and the levels of the world. Which are, basically like the levels of the souls. We're just another way to say it would be levels of consciousness. And so we've got another world called Yetzirah, which is formation. And it's that world is encompasses 6 of the Sphirot, which are known as the Midot, or the body. It's also called Zah or Zeranpin. And these 6 Sphirot are the Hesed, Tiferet, or I can say it right, Hesed, Guvurot, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Those are 6 of the center Spherots. They're associated with the Vav, the letter Vav of the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. And so this is Ruach is associated with the level of the soul, which is the Ruach, which is the spirit. And so then we come up to the final Sphirot, which is Malchut, which is the kingdom. And that is the world of Asiya, the world of action or completion. This physical world that we're in the world of
right
Asiya.
now. This world.
This is this is a physical world. And so this is associated with the soul level of the Nefesh, which is the animating force. So if we're going to talk a little bit about, and this course on these levels of Part Suf that we're talking about, Zah, Zeranpin, and Adam Kadmon, and Atzilut, which is Atzilut, which is associated with Chokmah, which is Abba, Father, and Berea, the Hay, is associated with Bina, and that's Ima, and which is mother, and then you have Zah, and then you have Nukva. So these are all the Partsufim, called the Partsufim, and the different parts of the spherotic structure as they're broke down.
So I got a question. My question is, so you were talking about the Nefesh, which is Malchut, what you called kingdom, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's associated with the world of Asiya. Am I saying that correct?
Asiya, yeah.
Asiya. So
and that's correct in Texan. I don't know.
Yeah, Asiya. Okay. So Asiya, and you said that's the world of action, which is the world we're in right now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This is our reality.
Right.
Okay. So does that relate back to the Torah when it says we will do and then we will hear because we're in the world of action?
Well, I think there's a little bit more to that than just being in the world of action, but absolutely. It's only here in this world, in the world of action, is what you do that matters. Okay. It's, I can think something here and it may have a certain impact, but if I do it, it has a definite impact. And so this is the world of action. So this is the world of the physicality. This is where, things are physically done, physically carried out, physically accomplished, and doing stuff like this. So this world is this physical world. Now within this physical world, it's on the soul level of this, what's called the animating force, or it could be called the animal soul, the animal soul level, because this nefesh operates, it's associated with the blood. And it is associated with the scripture, and the blood is in the life force is in the blood. Okay, that's the neshama. The neshama is in the blood. This base soul. It's kind of where spirituality touches physicality. Okay, and it's where it influences and the body, by not just only the blood, but really all of the fluids within the body, the hormones, the endorphins, the adrenaline, the saliva when you're hungry and your mouth is watering because it sees something that's appetizing. All these different fluids, the neshama is closely connected with this operation of the body and influencing the body. And
you said neshama. Is it the neshama or the
I'm sorry,
nefesh?
No, nefesh.
Nefesh.
Catch me if that, because sometimes I'll.
Right. No. I knew where you were going. I just let it go, and I got to thinking, people may not understand that.
No, I would, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
So
going to hurt.
we're talking on the nefesh level of consciousness. So there's really, I hate to say the word, you can't say base level, but that's really what it is. It's the base level of the soul. It's the most easiest to influence level of the soul. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, because it's associated with necessities. Eating is a necessity. Procreation is pretty much a necessity. All of these different things are necessities. And so you can influence it just as easy one way or another. You can, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, can influence it. And the Yetzer Tov can influence it as well, the good inclination. The nefesh it's neutral in a sense. It's just here to function the body. How your inclinations train that nefesh and influence that nefesh is kind of up onto how what's in control of your body, whether the evil inclination is in control or the good inclination is in control. It's going to kind of go that way. So it's really it doesn't have an agenda unless one of your inclinations has created an agenda for it. Whether it's a good inclination, you're going to do what's right, and you're going to eat what's right, and you're going to have the right relationships, and you're going to do the right things. Or if it's evil, you're going to eat the wrong things, and you're going to eat, and you're going to have the wrong relationships, and you're going to do all of that. It doesn't matter. It's pretty neutral.
It's really influenced on what you expose yourself to. If you're immersing yourself into Torah and studying Torah, or if you're out running the streets and doing things you're not supposed to be doing, or eating, sounds like dietary would affect it too. Is that correct? That's why. Yeah, I mean, this safeguard yourself, and that's why it's important to eating a certain way. That's why we see it in the Torah. Clean eating, and then you take it a step further into kosher and so forth. All that would, you used the word, I like that, train your nefesh. All those would affect your nefesh, correct?
Yes. Well, it affects your body. Your nefesh just reacts to it.
Right. Okay.
Your nefesh reacts to what it's trained to do. And if your Torah, if the Torah is not your instructor, then what is training it? You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. So it's it is a very base level, and it's all right to look at it as a base level. It's it's all right to think of, if you want to think of this level, this soul level, think of it as a child that's being born. It's a newborn child, and all it's interested in is itself. It's hot, it's cold, it's hungry, it's wet, it's uncomfortable, it's whatever it is. It's only worried about itself. Now, the soul matures and develops with, like the physical body matures and develops. So as the child grows and starts developing and its consciousness expands, it eventually gets to the point to where it realizes that there's something else other than itself. Okay. And there's something else to consider. I'm considering something else, not just myself now. Okay. And so, we can see that as that soul developing and reaching the conscious level of the spirit. Because now if you recognize that there's something else besides you, then you're recognizing the spirit level. Okay.
Which is what? Ruach?
Yes, which is the Ruach. And so this kind of, it kind of begs the question, what about an atheist? The atheist is on this level of nefesh, and it never advances to recognize anything other than itself. Now, this doesn't mean, and we shouldn't get this confused with the intellect, because atheists are very intellectual people. They're scientists, they're doctors, they're all kind of different things. All of these very intellectual people, but that doesn't have anything to do with the elevation of their consciousness on the soul levels.
Well, okay? I think that's to say that consciousness is your awareness to what surrounds you. That's what consciousness is, at least in my mind. I think, if somebody, you could be conscious of a few things and what's going around you. You could be conscious of a lot of things around you. That, like you said, that has nothing to do with intellect. You could be the most intellectual person, there is. But if you're not conscious of how your intellect is affecting people and things around you, then you're not, consciousness and intellect to me are two separate things.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think you can, we can say that the neshama is a level that the atheist has not surpassed because he doesn't realize anything but himself. But then the atheist can say, oh, well, I recognize my children, I recognize my spouse, I recognize my parents, and blah, 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 blah. And I have all of these, all of these responsibilities according to them. So I do recognize them. Well, basically that means you're at the ceiling of the neshama.
The nefesh.
The nefesh. You're at the ceiling of the nefesh. It means advanced, but you haven't recognized something other than yourself, because all of those things can be associated, and you can recognize them because they're all associated with you. They're your children, they're your spouse, they're your parents, they're your whatever, they're your co-workers, they're your fellow man, humankind, whatever. But you still haven't recognized something other than yourself as far as the level of the ruach, the spirit. Okay. And so when you come up into this level of the spirit, you're recognizing that there's something else. And so then you can look at maybe like the agnostic. The agnostic is going to say, there's a God, there's something that's spiritual that's going on. I don't understand what it is. I don't get it. I don't know what it is, but I recognize it. So they're at this level of ruach. Okay. So what's the difference here? So, and the saying is one man's floor is another man's ceiling. Even though this atheist is at a point to where they're at the ceiling of the nefesh level, the agnostic is at the floor of the ruach level, or the level of the spirit, you see. And then you advance up from there, and you advance all the way through Yetzirah. And then you advance to this idea of the neshama. And the neshama is kind of where the physical touches the spiritual. Because remember, back down at the nefesh, it was the spirit, is where the soul touches the physicality, and this is where physicality touches spirituality, to where, because it's like we're recognizing at the neshama level, we're recognizing that this breath of life within me is from God.
Right.
And my
Absolutely.
existence is from God. So when
So
we're
that you
talking
have
about
that you're outside, that you're just not a physical body, you're recognizing the spirit within yourself from your creator. That's the level of neshama. Is that correct?
yeah, you're recognizing that you're connected to it.
Right.
You're recognizing that you're connected. Now, so we can talk about, this is where we get into this spirit and this idea of breath. And so this is where we begin to recognize, like, that we are human beings. When I say we are a very unique being, meaning that we are basically thought of as speaking spirits. We have this ability to not only just, grunt sounds out of our mouths and do rudimentary communications by grunting or whatever. We have a sophisticated vocabulary and can articulate these spiritual concepts and ideas. This makes us a speaking spirit, and the responsibility of which is that we can elevate things through giving blessings over them, and elevate our food and elevate certain things because we can speak it in this world, in a world of physicality, and it affects the world of spirituality. So the speaking is both physical and spiritual. It's a very unique gift that we were given because we're, connected with the spirit and connected with the breath. And that when we speak, it is, it's coming from within the spirit, but yet it's also producing physical sound waves. So it is both physical and spiritual. And this is, what we're connected to through understanding these levels of the soul as being, being aware and being conscious of our spirituality, and also being aware and having a consciousness of being connected to God, at the neshama level and at the ruach level. And so this is how.
So would you would say nefesh be your actions, and then your speech be ruach, and then your thoughts being on the level of neshama? Is that one way of looking at it?
That's a level, but even we can, I've heard it said like this, that here in the world of physicality, we can say bad words or vulgar or negative language. We can use that here, and it's bad, and it looks bad. But what does it do? What do we say here? Oh, well, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Not here in physicality. But what is said is that in the spiritual level, that this being both physical and spiritual, this negativity and this harshness and this vulgarity and all of this stuff in the level of angels, it's like throwing hand grenades. You're doing in the higher worlds, in the world of Yetzirah, you're doing real damage. And that's what it said. They said it's even like killing angels when you're doing that. Is how dangerous what you're doing here that's affecting there, because especially with your speech, because it's interactive, both physical and spiritual. And you can speak blessings or cursings. Which one are you doing?
Right.
Which one
So what about your thoughts? Is that why it's important for someone to safeguard their thoughts? Because, but as human beings, that's our only way to articulate things, is to go back and forth and have these thoughts, even though sometimes these thoughts may not be, what we consider kosher, because maybe we don't have a grasp on what's kosher and not kosher, or what is Torah based and not Torah based, especially being, non-Jews. So, would thoughts be on the level of what you're talking about with speech?
Yeah, if there's in their saying or something, says, "As a man thinks, so he does."
Well, I mean,
so
yes,
you're think-
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying if we're trying to contemplate a lofty subject, and maybe we just ain't thinking about it the right way, are we doing damage, on that level?
Oh, if you're not thinking about something in a correct way, of course you're going to do that. You're doing damage. You're doing damage in the physical world. So yeah, your thoughts and containing your thoughts and controlling your thoughts is affecting your connection, your consciousness to God. That on that level of neshama, that you realize that you have that connection with God, and you're having, negative thoughts that are contrary to what God's Torah tells us.
So if
God wants for us,
so if there's somebody for whatever reason you may not get along with, or is very disagreeable with you, you see that person, and your first thought may be, I'm going to avoid this person at all costs, because I just can't, we just don't mesh, and then we think, man, I wish, maybe I didn't have to work around this person no more, or go to school with this person no more because of the grief they give me. Just having those thoughts about that person could be damaging to your soul.
Well, having negative thoughts about a person, yes. I mean, if could you find the good in this person and concentrate on what's valuable about them and what's good about them, and cultivate that relationship? Sure, you could do something like that. But stay on the same thing. It's not wrong to stay away from somebody that's negative and that knows it's going to create negativity and bring you down and do all that. So there's a safety mechanism to understand to stay away from that person. So the answer is both yes and no. Just depends on how you're approaching it and where you're at and how you're going to deal with that particular situation. Understanding the levels of the soul and the worlds and how some of this stuff operates. Even I don't think there's much simpler way to discuss. I'm sure there is, but a simpler way to discuss what we're talking about tonight than we're doing. And we can kind of see some of these things in practical applications, of what we're doing. And the more we know about it, the more we understand it, and the more simple we can work with these concepts and these ideas. And that's why I say it's probably not, not understanding the levels of the soul is probably one of the biggest things that keeps people from understanding God's word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To a full extent.
Right. And then that's why, when it was brought up last time, we touched on it, but that's why I wanted to go more in depth with it, because I think this terminology, and the layout and understanding the different levels of soul and how our actions and thoughts and speech can affect different things outside of our physical reality is very important for someone to understand when they're engaging in Torah and they're starting to study and they see these things and they really don't know. And that's why I asked the question about, thoughts, and speech and, because I've heard of, I know I never say this right. What is the evil tongue? How's it said in Hebrew?
Lashon hara.
Lashon hara. So, and that deals a lot with, that's about the speech, but I've never heard it taught on the level of thoughts, and I think that's what I was talking about. And so all these different concepts and these, when we talk about the spherotic structure and the different worlds and the levels of the soul, all those things, as you start to study and you pick up these different books and you start to read through them, you're going to see these terminologies. And like you were saying, it's very important for you to have someone teach you this. And I couldn't agree more.
It's best if you can. It's hard to come by. I mean, there's people out there teaching it. There are many rabbis that are teaching this to some degree to people who are ready to start engaging in this level. And there's that means certain different things to different people. But it's not like I said, if it's not something you're comfortable with, and if it's not something you want to do, then you don't. If it's not in your Bible, and you don't want to believe anything that's not in your Bible, then believe your Bible. But don't tell somebody else that what they're believing that you think is not in your Bible is there, because all of these concepts and all these things are within there. You just don't have the teaching and the consciousness to understand it.
To understand it. But all these different concepts you talked about tonight, you can actually see how these could be applied practically in your everyday life, like you were saying there at the end. With your thoughts, your speech, and elevating
your actions.
It's your actions, and how all these things are practical in your daily life. They're not just big words and they're not just lofty concepts.
Yeah. It's thoughts, speech, and actions. Well, you learned that in Sunday school?
Well, I didn't go to Sunday school, but yeah, maybe.
That's, people that do, people that have can relate to that. I didn't go to Sunday school either, but, or not as a child anyway, but, so it's everyday concepts. You're just now, with understanding this stuff, able to put a name to it and a location, a definition, and a location to things that you already know, which gives you a little bit deeper understanding of it. And like I said, we're just barely touching the surface of any of this, just as a very simple introduction to it.
Well, Russell, I appreciate it. And I think this is something we'll probably get into more as we go. And as we have these different podcasts and episodes, these are some terms we're going to be using, and I'm sure we're going to go over them again. And I appreciate your time, and it's been great. And I think it's a very good, like you said, introduction into these things that somebody can say, okay, I see these different terminologies. Now I got a place to put them, and start organizing your thoughts and your studying.
And it's a good, like I said, this is a good place to start, because we will touch on a lot of these different things as they apply to different subjects that we're going to talk about. And so we can come back and refer back to this and back to these concepts and these things that we looked at, and plug them into what we're talking about on many different levels. And then by doing so, we learn more and more and more about it. So I appreciate you, Brad, and appreciate you giving us the opportunity to discuss this and ask these questions and kind of bring some of this stuff out in a simple manner, in a simple way, to where we can learn together and discuss it and hopefully grow and elevate our consciousness some.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Russell. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Bye-bye.